Hello and welcome back. Auston Matthews is heating up. 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in his last 4 games. But get this, 27 shots in his last 4 games. I'll say that again, 27 shots in his last 4 games for an average of 6.75 shots per game. So whatever the line is for the Matthews shot prop, play the over and you'll make some money. But if you drafted him in the first round, maybe you're a little bit underwhelmed by the season that he's having, despite the fact that he's blocking shots and hitting and everything now. But he's cranking it up when it matters the most for your fantasy season. But obviously, he's owned up. So as we always do on a Monday, let's look at the top performers from last week, under 50% owned. 3 forwards, 2D, 1 goalie, and then we'll take a look at the data draft player and goalie hubs to find some trends at the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. But let's start where the fantasy week ended last night in Los Angeles, who finished up a 7-game homestand, and our first forward this week is a guy I picked up in my main league, and that is Victor Arvidsson. 51% owned because of the fact that he's been on fire this week. His ownership was a little bit lower than that even yesterday. But obviously being one of those players playing in the 10:30 game on Sunday, guys were rushing to the wire to grab him late, and it paid off. He had a 2-goal game last night with 1 assist, 2 power play points, and 8 shots. So if that was your last-minute ad for the week on Sunday, then that definitely paid off for you. On the last week, 3 games, 5 goals, 2 assists, 7 points, 4 power play points, 14 shots, 4.6 shots per game. He's averaging 5 shots per game over his last 12 games. So this shot volume floor is excellent for Victor Arvidsson. That's the main feature to his file. It wasn't necessarily there earlier in the year, but it's coming now. It's been happening for the last month, so you can kind of rely on that shot volume every game. Obviously, he'll have these 8-shot games like he did last night, but for the most part, he's getting 3, even when he's not actively shooting the puck the way that he was last night. Now, 9 points in his last 6 games on top of this last week performance. On the year, 53 points in 68 games. He's got 21 power play points and 201 shots. A shorthanded goal, so he does get some shorthanded time as well. Last night, so he's been playing on that Trevor Moore, Arvidsson, Danault line for most of the year, and that's been a line that I've literally talked about every other week or so on the channel because they're very consistent, and you can usually find those guys on the waiver wire. They were all hovering around 25 to 30% ownership for most of the year. Last night, they had to move Trevor Moore to center, so the line that Arvidsson was on was Danault, Arvidsson, Fiala, which is really good exposure. As long as Fiala can stay healthy, if they're going to continue with that, that's going to potentially bump his production. If they don't continue with that, he's still really productive with Trevor Moore and Phil Danault. They have really good chemistry. On top of all that, they have a 4-game week this week: Tuesday against Calgary, Thursday against Edmonton, Saturday against Seattle, and Sunday against Vancouver. So even if he can't get in your lineup on that heavy Saturday, he'll give you probably 3 games. Unless you just really can't add anybody for Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. But other than that, he's been a revelation for most of the season. A lot of the guys that we're talking about, they give you something consistently on a regular basis, and this is why I prefer veterans over younger players, because it happens all year round. 92nd percentile in power play points, 92nd percentile in shots, just under 3 shots per game, but again, averaging 5 shots per game over his last 12, 90th percentile in goals, 87th percentile in points per game. So he's doing a lot of offensive heavy lifting for the LA Kings, and he doesn't hit. That's the only knock on his file. Not a lot of hits, so if you're in a Baggers league, I wouldn't worry about it too much because he's getting a ton of shots, power play points, goals, and even assists. But it is worth noting that he would be a lot more complete and a lot higher up on the ratings board, even if he threw maybe half a hit per game more than he does right now. But excellent week for Victor Arvidsson. And up next, we have his teammate, Phil Danault, and there's no getting around it. 3 games last week, he had 5 assists, 4 of them on the power play, and 7 blocks. Kind of a weird stat line because he didn't have any goals. He didn't have a lot of peripherals, not a lot of shots. I think he only had like 3 shots on the week. But he is obviously on that line. They're getting a lot of offensive production out of their top 6. Even their top 9, they've moved some guys around. Velarde's dropped down. They have Byfield up on the top line. But this line has stayed intact, and they've been relatively productive. Now, For Danault, he's only been held pointless in 2 of his last 9 games. That's consistency. That's what you're looking for in fantasy. You would prefer a little bit more goal scoring, but nonetheless, 3 assists, 2 on the power play. Last game, 2 shots and a block. He's getting a couple of blocks lately. That is good news if you're in a league that has that. We can see here 69th percentile. You're not going to target him for that. But the fact that he's chipping in now at the most important point of your fantasy season and adding some blocks at that point is really nice as well. 89th percentile in power play, 86th in assists. Shot volume is not bad at just a shade under 2 shots per game. And the point per game is right around where Arvidsson is, 85th percentile. So you're getting the same type of exposure. It's just the fact that he's a single position center that makes him a little less valuable than a guy like Arvidsson, who's going to get into your lineup a little bit more this week. Now, with all of that said, Danault has 10 points in his last 9 games. And on top of all of that, when you combine and you look at Arvidsson, Danault, all of these guys together, the Kings are 10-0-2 in the last month, and they're averaging 4.3 goals for per game. So that's why I'm pimping their goaltending, and that's why I'm talking about 2 LA Kings this week. I think they're a wagon. I think they're a favorite to come out of the West. For my money, it's between them, Edmonton, and Dallas as the 3 best teams in the West right now. And anytime you can get, jump on that speeding train as it's moving down the tracks, that's something that's going to potentially put you over the top this week in fantasy. So if you're looking for a center, Phil Danault this week has been, or last week I should say, was incredibly productive. They do have that 4-game week, as I just mentioned. It is Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday heavy. But also worth noting, if you're in a face-off league, I'm sure this guy's gone. He's not on your wire, but he's averaging 53.9, 54% on the face-offs and 621 face-off wins. So in face-off leagues where you're getting a point per face-off win or something, he's a must-own, and he has been all year, so he's probably not there for you, but just did want to highlight that because he's relatively elite level in his face-off wins. But an excellent week for Phil Danault, and let's turn to another guy who is known for something, but he's relatively consistent in giving you that floor, but he's popped off with some offensive production, and that is Sammy Blais. Known for his hitting, that's his number 1 fantasy feature, but he's absolutely popped off since returning to St. Louis after being traded from the Rangers. On the season, he's got 20 points. I believe all but 4 of those are with St. Louis. All 8 goals are with St. Louis, and those are coming in the last 10 or 15 games or so since the trade deadline. I mentioned in a previous video that he's hits monster, 98th percentile in hits, 3.37 hits per game, but he was above that this week, 3.75 hits per game, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points. He's been getting an elevated role. Sometimes they've had him on the second line. Right now he's slated on the third line with Braden Shen and Jakub Vrana. So he's getting an opportunity with some offensive players. He's getting some power play time, a power play point this past week. So he is getting a little bit of probably net front power play time, but that's going to help his file. They do have a 4-game week this week as well. And on top of all of that, he's giving you this floor. Look at the hits over here. 7 hits in this game where he put up 2 assists and a power play point. So that's an interesting stat line because you're getting the assists, the power play, and a ton of hits. So in a bangers league, it's definitely worth taking a flyer on Sammy Blais if you want to do that this week. I was debating between him and Braden Shen. I went with Shen just because it seems to me the offensive production is going to be a little bit more consistent than Sammy Blais, who's on fire right now. But if you want to ride this hot streak, look at the amount of goals that they're scoring. They had 6 goals in a losing effort last game. They had 6 against Anaheim, 4 against Detroit. So they've been cranking it up. They look like a much better team lately than they did earlier in the season. And if you're going to get access to anybody in their top 9, this is probably one of the lower owned guys at 21% owned, dual eligible, so he will get in your lineup a little bit more. And as I mentioned, if you're in a bangers league or a points league that has a point per hit or something like that, he's going to give you a really nice floor. And then on top of that, he's going to come in with some point production as well. But even when he's not producing, he'll do something for you, and that will help you out this week as you try to take down. It could be your championship week or it could be your semifinal week, depending on what happens in your league or where your playoffs started. But nonetheless, an excellent week for Sammy Blais. Why the hell couldn't he do this for the Rangers? Up next, a guy I probably have not shut up about for the last month, Mike Matheson, 43% owned. He was on this video last week. So I basically just used the same file, but 3 games, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points, 2 power play points, 13 shots, 4.33 shots per game, and 6 blocks. So two blocks per game on top of that. As I mentioned yesterday in the weekly video, he's an incredibly consistent, very complete defenseman, 79 on the hits and blocks hub. So he's doing a little bit of everything. The hits, 1.24 hits per game is his lowest. Everything else is really consistent and close to, if not over 80%. 89th percentile in blocks. And as I just mentioned, he went over 2 blocks per game, or right on the nose, 2 blocks per game last week. On the season, he missed a bunch of time, 39 games, 28 points. That's really, really good. So he's over 0.66 points per game on the season, 2 game winners, 8 power play points, and 100 shots and 61 blocks. So he's getting the shot volume. You can see it down here in the log, 13 shots, a 5-shot game, a 5-shot game, a 3-shot game, 3 blocks, 2 blocks, 1 block. He's getting a little bit of everything. He's got 9 points in his last 7 games, 3 goals, 6 assists. He's been a shade under a point per game since the beginning of February. In February, he had 8 points in 9 games. In March, 12 points in 13 games. So for a defenseman to be right around that point per game mark, and not that long ago, even maybe a couple of hours ago, he was a 35% rostered player. Now he's at 43, so he's climbing. If you are in need of a defenseman this week for pretty much any category coverage, he's getting shots, he's getting a little bit of goals, he's getting power play production, he's the power play quarterback. Nick Suzuki has heated up as well, and you're getting access to Suzuki through Matheson, and then you're getting the blocks as well, and a little bit of hits coverage on top of all of that. So a very complete defenseman. He's been on this for at least a couple of months now, so if he's available, go pick him up right now. I dropped Aaron Ekblad and picked up Mike Matheson over the weekend in preparation for this THHL matchup that I have this week against the Lake Mohawk Moose. So this is a player that I've had my eye on for a while, and I just could not wait any longer and hope that Ekblad came back and started to produce. Had to go with Matheson. He's been way better over the last month. So incredible file for Matheson. Go out and grab him if you need a defenseman. But if you're in a deeper league and you can't get him, JJ Moser, 8% owned. On the week, 1 goal, 1 assist, a power play point, 7 shots, 7 hits, 14 blocks, 4.6 blocks per game. On the season, he averages 1.68 blocks per game. Last week, 4.6. Currently, second pair, playing second power play unit. But he, not necessarily the most productive player. He's youngish. He's not necessarily a true rookie coming in at 18, but he is young, so he is a little bit inconsistent. But he's been this month the most productive that he's been since November, when I was mentioning him frequently on the channel in the weekly videos. In November, he had 9 points in 12 games. That's when Chikrin was out. That's when he was quarterbacking the top power play unit. This month, he's got 6 points in 14 games, so a little bit less, but he is getting a ton of peripherals. As you can see last week, 7 shots, 7 hits, 14 blocks is crazy. They do have do they have a 4-game week this week? I believe they do. Just have to double check that. But he is getting some opportunities now. He's on the second pair, second power play unit. And unlike the team, Moser is better on the road than at home. He's got 19 points in 39 games on the road versus 9 points in 35 home games. So that is a little bit weird. But if you're looking at picking him up, he's been averaging a lot more ice time over the past number of days since they traded all of their players at the deadline. He's at 23:30 time on ice in March. You can see it down here, 27:52 in that game against Edmonton, 23:44 against Colorado. So they're trusting him in all the big moments, and that's going to help with the peripherals, with the shot blocking, the hits, and everything else. If you're on the ice more, you're going to have an opportunity to let the puck hit you a little bit more. So that might explain why he's got so many blocks this past week, but that's what you're getting him for. Blocks, a little bit of power play exposure, and some assists. Everything else is relatively low. But for 8% owned, this is a nice deep league play if you need a defenseman this week. And guys like Valimaki are owned up. Guys like Matheson are owned up. You could go to JJ Moser and get some peripherals and then get a little bit of offensive exposure as well. Arizona's offense is playing much better, and they do have a bunch of home games this week, so that should favor the team, if not Moser, because as I just mentioned, he is a little bit more productive on the road for whatever reason. But an excellent week for JJ Moser. Glad to see him back on this list after a several-month absence. But that brings us to the goalie of the week. This is a guy I brought up in the video yesterday, Sam Montembeault, 13% owned. Last week, 2 games, 2.0 goals against, 929 save percentage, and 2 wins. On the season, on a bad defensive Montreal team, he's above 500. 15, 14, and 3. 328 goals against, 905 save percentage, and his 13.4 goals saved above expected is 12th in the entire NHL. And right around him is guys like Vejmelka and Carter Hart, and then above those guys are the top goaltenders in the league, the guys like Shesterkin, Allmark, etc. So the fact that he's this skilled, 89th percentile in goals saved above expected, that is what you would be owning him for. You're not getting him for the team exposure. They are 30th in expected goals against. So that's the one reason why I haven't talked about him much on the channel, because I don't want exposure to Montreal's defense. They are still scoring goals and they are chipping away at some wins. He's got 3 wins in his last 6 starts, but the fact that they are really porous defensively, they cough it up in their own end. When I looked at this in December, they were 100 defensive zone turnovers higher than the second worst team in the league. So they were by far and away the worst team in the league in defensive zone turnovers, and I don't see any signs of that's improved. Matheson is a nice piece back there. They do have Edmondson and Savard healthy, so that might bump that up a little bit, but they're still coughing it up in their own end, and that's going to help, or that's going to hurt their team exposure. But for Montembeault, if you need a goaltender this week, they have Monday at Buffalo, Tuesday at Philadelphia. He'll get one of those 2 games. Then they have Thursday versus Florida and Saturday versus Carolina. I wouldn't start him on Saturday. You're going to have a bunch of other goaltending options on Saturday. So if you're getting him, you're probably getting 2 games out of him, one of the Monday, Tuesday games, and then probably Thursday against Florida. So if you need 2 starts this week, Montembeault would be a nice pickup. As you can see here at 939, 913, only 2 goals against in those 2 games. And they absolutely smacked the Columbus Blue Jackets 8-2. So if there is a favorable matchup, Montreal against Buffalo, that could be a high-scoring game. Against Philly, that could be a little bit lower scoring, but Philly's had a little bit of an offensive explosion lately too, so that could be a little bit more of a high-scoring game, whichever one he gets. And then Florida is not necessarily great defensively either, so there could be some scoring, but he probably will perform relatively well, especially if he gets a ton of shots. He seems to do a little bit better when he gets a little bit more volume. But an excellent week for Sam Montembeault, and that's going to bring us to the goalie hub. And we'll start there and look at the goaltending hub, and then we'll transition to the player hub. So now we're at the hub, and we can see some of the trends that are going on in the goaltending world right now. A lot of goaltenders trending in the right direction. Georgiev, Hellebuck, Shesterkin, Swayman, Vanacek, all in the right direction. Samsonov going backwards a little bit, and he's banged up right now. I picked up Joseph Woll for that start yesterday, and that put me over the top in the Data Draft League. So thank you, Joseph Woll. Thank you, Samsonov, for being a little bit injured right now. Hopefully he gets back healthy soon. Saros has been going the other way, mainly because of his team. They're just, they cannot score goals. They're not really competitive right now, and that does worry me. I have Saros in my main league this week. I'm wondering whether I start him against Boston at all, because he's going to get shelled. They're going to lose the game, so I might as well just bench him at that point. You also have guys like Fleury trending a little bit in the wrong direction, but they have a 3-game week this week, so if you have Fleury or Gustafsson, I would hold on to them. You're still getting elite level team exposure on defense. Aiden Hill hasn't played a lot, so that's not fair to him, but he's just been trending back because other guys have been trending up. Stuart Skinner going the wrong way a little bit, but Jacob Markstrom, really disappointing season. He had a little bit of a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, where he was starting to look a little bit better, but it did not hold up. He's been going in the wrong direction. Jaro Halak, I mentioned in the weekly video yesterday, he would be a really good spot start this week. The Rangers have a back-to-back in New Jersey, I believe, and then in Buffalo the following night. So if he gets the Buffalo game, that was a nice spot start. He's been trending in the right direction. Mackenzie Blackwood is now the backup in New Jersey after returning from injury. They sent Akira Schmid down, so if you were wondering about picking one of those guys up, Blackwood is going to be the backup. He's going to get some starts, so that could be a nice goaltending pickup if you need it. Here's Montembeault down at the bottom because of his team exposure, but he's been trending up over the past couple of days. Craig Anderson going the wrong way, as Buffalo is going the wrong way as well. Charlie Lindgren, I believe that's a sample size thing. He didn't play that great in his last start or two, so this could just be a small sample size. They do have a back-to-back this week, I believe. It is a 3-game week, though, so not a ton of volume for Lindgren. You don't have to worry about that too much. Thatcher Demko, trending in the right direction. He's been really good over the last month or so since coming back from injury, so that is positive news. I would think about that more so for next year, potentially drafting him as your G1 or G2, because he's started to find his game late in the season when nobody's really paying attention, so that could be a nice value proposition in your draft next year. Some of these other guys, Jake Allen, he's been going the wrong way, which is why Montembeault has taken the net. Gibson is Gibson. He's going to get shelled every night, and he's going to perform the best that he can. You have some other guys here, UPL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, three-headed goaltending monster in Buffalo. They just added a fourth in Devin Levi. I don't know if Levi gets any starts. I would assume they'll start him once the season's wrapped up, once they're mathematically eliminated. Maybe they'll give him a couple of starts just to see. Somebody asked me about Mads Søgaard. He's been getting some pretty not great starts lately, but for whatever reason, Ottawa is chipping away at some wins. They're still in the playoff hunt, and they do need some goaltending to continue to make that push. So if he's going to be the guy, you could take a chance on it. It's just not a great defensive team. In fact, let me pull up Søgaard, because that could be spelled it wrong. Søgaard is one of those guys that when you're trying to find a goalie off the waiver wire, he's probably there for you because nobody really knows who he is because of the fact that Forsberg's normally their backup. And as you can see here, there's nothing really enticing about his file. The goals saved above expected is below. The team exposure is not great. The save percentage, the goals against, nothing crazy there. He's a really low goaltender on the hub, so I wouldn't necessarily think of him as my first choice. A guy like Halak would be one of my first choices, but this is just a quick glance at the goaltending hub, but let's take a moment to switch to the player hub and look at some trends there. So at the player hub now, I've sorted this by change interval just to show who's been really hot. Dorofeyev, that's a very small sample size, but he is really hot. I mentioned him in yesterday's video. Sammy Blais, we talked about today. He's popped off, and he has played a lot more games than Dorofeyev, so this is not just a sample size bias. He is actually improving a lot, and as I mentioned in the video today, 6 points in his last 4 games is going to do that to you. Jesse Ylonen, there's all these guys in Montreal that are capable of scoring when they're moved up in the lineup. Guys like Harvey Pinard, Pezzetta when he was moved up a little bit, Ylonen, any of these guys, if they're getting an opportunity in the top 6, getting some power play time, they become targets in deeper leagues. In my opinion, I wouldn't go to it in a 12-team league and risk my entire fantasy season on one of these guys, but in a deep league, if you're looking for a guy who's hot, that could work for you. Mikey Anderson I brought up on yesterday's video. Typically a hits and blocks defenseman, but he's been getting some offensive production lately as well. Same type of thing for Sean Walker. They're using everybody in LA. If you want to find the best team to hitch your wagon to right now, in my opinion, it's LA. Because a lot of their guys are ownable on the waiver wire, and they are red hot right now. But they did just finish the 7-game homestand, so that could impact things as they head out onto the road. Tom Wilson, I mentioned in yesterday's video, he's been red hot lately, a must-own in bangers leagues. He was only 40% when I checked yesterday, so that is a little bit low. Ekholm has been really nice since coming over to Edmonton. He's popped off 4.5 change interval for Ekholm, and the offensive production has come, and it comes in bunches. A couple of goals one game, a 3-assist game a couple games ago. So if you're getting Ekholm, you're looking for defensive stats, you're looking for peripherals, but he's getting you exposure to McDavid and Draisaitl, so pucks are going to touch his stick and then go right to McDavid on the breakout or whatever. He'll go up the ice and get you a secondary assist, so that is nice. For Evangelista, for all of these guys in Nashville, let's just look at Nashville really quick, because they just cannot score. They have nothing left. So Novak is a really good player. I've been watching him a little bit more closely lately. He's very skilled. Evangelista, same type of thing. They also have Tomasino, who is a 68 on the hub. But they lost Duchesne recently, I believe, out a couple weeks or maybe the rest of the season for Duchesne. So they really just don't have anything left. If you're in a deeper league and you need someone who's going to get top 6 exposure and top power play time, One of these guys, Evangelista, would be a good hot player right now. Novak would be a little bit more reliable because he's been doing it for a little bit longer. Parssonen's out still. Forsberg's out still. McDonough's been in and out. He's had a little bit of time day to day. Tyson Barrie actually had a really nice week last week. I believe 4 points in 4 games. So maybe if you're looking for that power play defenseman, but he is 71% owned, so that could potentially help you in a deeper league, or I'm sorry, a shallow league. But yeah, this Roman Josi day-to-day crap has been killing me. I had to drop him in one of my leagues because they don't have IR+, so I literally just had to drop Roman Josi, which is insane. But hopefully he gets back soon, because without him, they are pretty anemic offensively, and I don't want exposure to any of these guys. So that is something to note, because a lot of people have been asking me about guys like Novak, Evangelista, Tomasino, some of these younger players. I don't want access to them unless Yossi's back and they have some healthy bodies in the lineup, but they don't right now. Some of these other guys, Mulligan has moved down to the third line. That was probably a one-off situation where he went off last week, I believe it was, when he got moved up a little bit in the lineup. Evan Rodriguez is back, so that bumps him down a little bit. Noah Cates I talked about yesterday. Actually, I didn't talk about him specifically, but Philadelphia is much better recently, scoring a lot more goals. Tippett, Farabee, guys like that. But Noah Cates, if you're in a face-off league, he's taking all the draws. He's the #1 center. So he is something to keep an eye on if you're in a face-off league as well, and he's been relatively productive offensively. Here's Joel Farabee to kind of back that up about the Flyers' offense. And then just some of these other guys are not necessarily productive, so let's filter it out by points per game and just get guys who are around half a point per game, just to get rid of some of these red files in here. Marcus Johansson fitting in relatively nicely since coming over from Washington. I don't know where his role is going to be when everybody's healthy, but right now he's getting an elevated role, so that does help his fantasy exposure. Kasperi Kapanen has been really nice since coming over from Pittsburgh, getting picked up off waivers, going to St. Louis, and St. Louis's offense is a lot more balanced now. They have 3 really good scoring lines that they can go to. Jake Neighbors is on the top line, so keep that in mind if you're looking for a younger, lesser-owned player. That'll get you some of that exposure. Just look at his file really quick, because he is top line on a team that scored 6 goals in the last 2 games each, and he's not necessarily, he doesn't have the best hub because he just hasn't been relatively productive. Younger players are not that consistent, so that would explain some of that. Getting some hits though, that's good to see. Does have 2 power play points, so that probably came in the last couple of games, so I would definitely keep an eye on that if you're in need of that. I talked about Boquist on the video yesterday. So there's a lot of guys here, and you can get access to these player and goalie hubs for just $3. It's $3 a month, but you'll probably just use it for the next 2 weeks and then cancel. So $3 gets you access to this. You can custom tailor all of these filters to exactly what you need, and that could make or break your season at this point. When you're looking for, usually people have 4 ads for the end of the week or for the entire week, and you want to maximize those 4 ads and get exactly what you need, and you can hone in on exactly what you need using these filters and using the player hub in general. So if you want that, the link is in the description below. That's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you for watching till the end. I wish you all the best of luck in your fantasy matchups, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.